So there's a few who haven't been here, thanks to God. So like I'll hand over the floor, I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for coming. Cork's important to me, the movie club's important for me, but above all, as listeners, you're important for me. Blue Bloods rocks.
He's so full of S's, eyes are round, you know that. Some Like It Hot, okay, made in 1958, released in 1959, stars Marilyn Monroe, as you know, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Joan Shawley, and a collection of some of the ugliest character actors in the history of motion pictures. If you look at the hearse scene at the beginning, there's a group of guys in the hearse, and they look as if their facial features were blasted together by some kind of a hammer. They're appalling looking guys. But as I say, made in '58, it was nominated for 6 Oscars, and typical at the time of comedy, and comedies didn't get their due when it came to the Oscars, and it won 1. But it was a huge success. It was the 3rd most successful box office picture of the year, and of course it went on to become, there was an American Film Institute poll a couple of years ago, I think it was 2006, and in that they voted it the best comedy of all time. And to some extent it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have worked. Mainly because of the war between the star, Marilyn Monroe, and the writer, director, producer, Billy Wilder. Monroe, at this stage, she was quite famous for sort of her antics. And on this movie went 28 days over schedule. She phoned in sick on 12 days, and she was late on the set for 35 hours after that, which is another 5 days. And what she would do is she would go into her caravan, and she was afraid to come out. She didn't want to come out. That's generally how she behaved on the set. And he would go and he would plead with her, and he would send other people to do it, and he would send her assistants to do it. And eventually, when you see her in this, you just won't believe it. There are famous stories about the number of takes that he had to shoot with her. She has a scene where she has to knock on a door and say, "It's me, sugar." And they had to shoot it 59 times for her to get three words right. And there's another scene where she's rooting around in the drawer looking for whiskey, and all she has to say is, "Where's the bourbon?" And again, in that case, it was 47 takes in order to get it right. But he had told, Wilder knew what he had in Marilyn Monroe. He knew that she was a great star. What you see in this is, you know, she didn't make any other great movies. This is the one great movie that she made, and she's wonderful in it. And he knew he knew that she was a star. He knew what a star was. He knew what a star like her could bring to a movie like this. And even though they had all these problems, he struck it lucky with her. She was wonderful. And you'd wonder about Monroe. Why was she the way she was? She spent her whole life looking for respectability, looking to be recognized, because she had this gross insecurity. And again, as I say, it's kind of easy to understand. At the age, she never knew who her father was. At the age of 3, her mother, who was schizophrenic, tried to smother her. She was abandoned in an orphanage in Los Angeles at the age of 9. She was married at 16. She was divorced at 18, and eventually she became part of the what they call the party circuit in Hollywood, and she was treated more or less as a prostitute. And she spent her whole life trying to live this down. And when they sent her the script for Some Like It Hot, she threw it on the floor. She had left Hollywood, and she was living in New York. She was married to Arthur Miller, the playwright, and she hadn't been to Hollywood for 2 years, and they showed her the script for this, and she threw it on the floor and stamped on it and said, "Another dumb blonde role." She didn't want to play another role of the type that she had been associated with. And she held out for weeks on end. Her husband, her agents, and everybody around her told her this was a great role. This was the role of her life. But she had to be convinced to do it. And in the end, she did do it, and she loved it, as she said anyway, working with Wilder. She said later that she loved working with Wilder. But when it was finished, he was interviewed several times, and he started to talk quite frankly about his relationship with her. He was the only director who worked with her twice. He also did the 7-Year Itch, which some of you may remember. But he said we were in mid-flight and there was a nut on board. That's how he described her and his relationship with her. And he said, someone asked him would he work with her again, and he said that he had been to his psychiatrist and to his doctor, and he was told that he was too rich and too old to work with her again. So, but one thing that did happen was that she was pregnant while she was making the movie, and about 12 hours after the film finished, she had a miscarriage. She suffered a miscarriage, and her mother-in-law and her husband, they all accused Billy Wilder, who had made her apparently run up and down the stairs 14 times before the end of the movie, and they all accused him of being responsible for the miscarriage. So there was a very, very nasty and very public exchange of comments and communications at the end of it. But eventually, quite a short period, a couple of years, everybody began to realise that this was a great, great movie. It was made, by the way, in black and white. Wilder loved working in black and white, and he felt that if they'd shot it in colour, even though Monroe's contract suggested that all of her movies had to be made in colour, but he convinced her that if they made this in colour, that the drag makeup wouldn't come across properly. So he convinced her to make it in black and white. And it works, I think, mainly because so much so many of the elements come together. This guy was a great filmmaker. He's the man who made Double Indemnity, he made Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17, a whole succession, The Apartment. He made The Apartment after this. A whole succession of great, great movies. And he was an auteur, a guy who imprinted his personality on these films. He wrote them, he produced them, he directed them. He basically said, how did there's an expression about cutting a movie in your head, and that's what he did. He knew exactly the kind of shot and the kind of scenes that he wanted as he went along. And you'll see it in this. Everything about it is so well balanced, and she is gorgeous. I'll just say one other thing about her. There's a scene in it where she talks about always getting the fluffy end of the lollipop. She talks about her obsession with saxophone players and how she loves saxophone players, and they always leave her. And your heart will go out to her. She's just gorgeous in it, and it shows her as a star of the first magnitude. Thank you.
This is a very special event. I have to tell you, it's the first time Philip has ever finished on time. And you are witness to it. God knows, there was all the other guys who didn't have time to get to, but we will be here all night. Philip, a trivia question.
All right, okay.
The connection between Billy Wilder and one of our sponsors tonight.
1, 2, 3.
Well done.
Yeah, but that's the only Billy Wilder movie he knows.
1, 2, 3, yeah? It was a wonderful movie with Jimmy Cagney, who was the chief executive for Coca-Cola Berlin. And we wouldn't be here tonight. No, I'm in charge of it now. We wouldn't be here tonight only because Coca-Cola, our sponsors, have helped us all at these movie sets to get them. I will come to it.
Yeah,
I'm
quick
I promise. So my thanks to Coca-Cola. Afterwards, one of the Cool Hands, you know Cool Hands? We've got maps there for you if you don't, but it's by the post office over by Alva Blanca Street, happy memory, where you sneak a fag. And Margaret, Margaret here as manager of the Gate Cinema, is extraordinarily generous to us, because remember, she's giving us this screen, which is a revenue generator. She's given it to us. So we're deeply grateful to Coca-Cola, to Cunahan's, and of course to Margaret here at the Gate Street. The other thing is, tonight there's a long story about me and drink, but one of them is that after 2 bottles of stout, my body is antibodies. But tonight I have to be more careful with the drink, because tomorrow I'm at 7:30. I'm on the first tee in Glencastle in Dublin in the Irish Ladies Pro-Am with the gorgeous Christina Kim, size 16, wearing a chubby hat, and knocks the ball a mile. So I'll have to drive back Dublin tonight to be in good shape. All right, what's your story?
Quick. The reference to 123 reminds me of a really good Wilder gag. He was making a movie called Love in the Afternoon with Gary Cooper and Audrey Hepburn, and he was going from Hollywood to Europe. He was an Austrian, by the way, so he grew up in Europe. But he was going to look for locations. He went to Berlin, he went to Vienna, and he went to Paris. And before he went, she asked him, that's Audrey Hepburn asked him, to find a special kind of bidet for her. So he went around all these European capitals and he could not find the bidet. So he sent her a telegram saying, can't find bidet, suggest you do handstands in the shower.
All right, Margaret, we're bang on schedule. To all of you, thanks very much. See you in Coonans later on. I'll be the one on tonic water as I'm driving back down. To all of you, thank you so much. This is now embedded in our calendar, the first Wednesday of every month. Chinatown is next month. Love to have you. Thank you so much for listening and have a really good evening.